Hello, Assalamu alaikum. My name is Nadia, and today I will tell you a new story, The Mountain and the Squirrel. Okay, the mountain and the squirrel had a quarrel. They had a fight, and the farmer called the latter Little Prig. Bun replied, "You are doubtless very big, but all sorts of things and weather must be taken in together to make up a year and a sphere. And I think it no disgrace to occupy my place. If I am not so large as you are not so small as I, and not half so spry." Apparently, the difficult words were former, the thing that was mentioned first, the mountain. Latter, the thing or idea that was mentioned last, the squirrel. Okay? Prig, a person who is self righteous and narrow minded. Okay? Spry, active and lively. I hope you get not deny you make a very pretty squirrel track. Talents differ, all in well and wisely put. If I cannot carry forests on my back, neither can you crack a nut. By Ralph Waldo Emerson. Apparently, this story is written by Ralph Waldo Emerson. So I hope you like the story. I'll be putting up another one very soon. Here's another story, the one that got away. And what have we to remember to bring tomorrow? Mrs. Cooper asked at 3:30. Malcolm sitting near the bank wondered why she said we. She wasn't going to bring anything. Something interesting, Mrs. Cooper, said everyone else all together. And what are we going to do then? They asked, what will we do? Stand up and talk about it, Mrs. Cooper. So don't forget, all right, chairs on tables. Goodbye, class 4. Goodbye, Mrs. Cooper. Goodbye, everybody. It all came out ever so slow, like saying prayers in assembly. Amen, said Malcolm very quietly. Class 4 put its chairs on the table and collected its coat and went home talking about all the interesting things it would bring into school tomorrow. Walked by himself. Mrs. Cooper had first told them to find something interesting on Monday. Now it was Thursday, and still he had not come up with any bright ideas. There were plenty of things that he found interesting. But the trouble was that they never seemed to interest anyone else. Last time this had happened, he had brought along his favorite stone and shown it to the class. Okay, so like this. See, there's a lot of boys in the class, and there's Mrs. Cooper. Okay, so let's go forward. Very nice, Malcolm, Mrs. Cooper said. Mrs. Cooper had said, "Now tell us, what is interesting about it?" He hadn't known what to say. Surely, anyone looking at the stone could see how interesting it was. He was going to bring her gerbil. James, Sarah, and William had loudly discussed rare shells and fossils. And the only spider in the world with 5 legs. "It can't be a spider then," said David, who was eavesdropping. "It had an accident," William said. Isabel wanted to bring her pocket calculator and show how it could write her name by punching in 738051. Okay? And turning it upside down. She did this every time, but it still looked interesting. His stone had once been there as well, but after class 4 had said it was boring, he had put it back in the garden. He still went to see it sometimes, though. What he really needed was something that could move about like Mary's gerbil or William's five-legged spider. He sat down on his bed and began to think. On Friday after assembly, class 4 began to be interesting. Mary kicked off with the gerbil that whirled round its cage like a hairy balloon, with the air escaping. Then they saw William's lame spider, James' fossil, Jason's collection of snail shells stuck one on top of another, like the leaning tower. Like the leaning tower of Pisa and David's. Bottled beans that they had kept in an airtight jar for 3 years. They were still as glossy as new shoes. It was Malcolm's turn. He went up to the front and held out a matchbox. He had chosen it very carefully. It was the kind with the same label top and bottom, so that when you opened it, you could never be sure that it was the right way up and all the matches fell out. Malcolm opened it upside down and jumped. Mrs. Cooper jumped too. Malcolm threw himself down on the hands and knees and looked under the desk. "What's the matter?" Mrs. Cooper asked. "It's fallen out," Malcolm cried. "What is it?" Mrs. Cooper said, edging away. "I don't know. It's got 6 legs and sharp teeth. And sort of frilly ginger eyebrows on stalks," he pronounced. He pounced. "There it goes." "Where?" "Missed it," said Malcolm. "It's running under your chair, Mary." Mary squeaked and climbed on the table because she thought that she was the right way to behave. Mary squeaked and climbed on the table because she thought that was the right way to behave when creepy crawlies were all about. "I see it," Jason yelled and jumped up down. See, here the class is on, all in disarray, here and there. David threw a book in the direction that James was pointing, and James began beating on the floor with a rolled up comic. "I got it! I killed it!" he shouted. "It's crawling up the curtains," Sarah said, and Mrs. Cooper, who was standing by the curtains, moved rapidly away from them. "It's over by the door," Mary shrieked, and several people ran to head it off. Chairs were overturned. Malcolm stood by Mrs. Cooper's desk with his matchbox. His contribution was definitely the most interesting thing that anyone had seen that morning. He was only sorry he hadn't seen it himself. This is a story by Jan Mark. Hope you liked the story. If you like the story, thank you.